What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Martial Arts Monday review. This week we're taking a look at yet another Chang Cheh film from Shawscope Volume 2, The 10 Tigers of Kwangtung. This is yet another Venom mob movie, and on the special features, I'll put it up on the screen here. I thought it was pretty cool. They had a picture from a magazine which actually showed 6 Venoms, so they included Wei Pai in there. There's really 5 Venoms and some other actors that were sort of supporting players in the Venom mob movies, but they have Wei Pai included in there. Of course, he did wear a mask in 5 Venoms. I guess that's the reason why he's in this, though. And part of the problem with this film is that it would probably be easier for me to tell you who's not in it than who is in it. This film is packed with people. The plot was going to be sort of convoluted to begin with, and then they had to take a break in filming and resume like a full 2 years later and finish the film. So there was a lot of things that happened behind the scene to make this film kind of a mess. An enjoyable mess, but kind of a mess. So we're going to get into it. It's actually kind of fun to talk about. IMDb says 1979. Apparently they were filming in 78. Production stopped, and they didn't resume until January of 80. And then it was released in December of 80. So even that span of time, I mean, they didn't hold these films back to pick out the ideal time to release them. They just cranked them out. So that's even strange. What they were able to do in the break was film flashback scenes with different actors, because this film was actually sort of divided into 2 parts. It's about 90 minutes long. I think the first main part, with most of the recognizable actors, most of the Venom mob actors, is about an hour, and then the second part is about a half an hour. And for the life of me, I didn't know whether they jumped forward or backwards in time. I had no idea. But apparently it was forward in time. This is another tale of revenge, and it's set in the backdrop of the Qing versus Ming. Some of the families are on the Qing side, some are on the Ming side. And Ku Fang plays a rebel leader who they're trying to hide. And both sides sort of will just pick up random sort of fighters off of the street and form this alliance, and they have to decide which side they're on. And it sort of explores the theme of how far do you take your revenge. In Chang Cheh films, often the people that we think are going to be the protagonists turn out to be just as bloodthirsty as the bad guys. Films like Killer Constable, and such is the case in this film. But let's just talk about who's not in it. That's the easiest thing. I mean, Gordon Liu's not in this. David Chang is not in this. Lau Kar-leung is not in this, although I think he had sort of separated from Chang Cheh at that point. And so next week I do have a Lau Kar-leung movie just to change it up, but he wouldn't have worked with Chang Cheh anyway. And I thought of somebody else. Chen Quan-tai is not in this. Everyone else is in this. The whole Venom mob is in this, including supporting players like Wei Pai and Wang Longwei, Ku Fang, as I mentioned, Ti Lung, Alexander Fusheng, and the whole Venom mob. I mean, it's just packed with people. So essentially you have this group getting revenge on behalf of or against, to be honest, I don't remember, the 10 Tigers of Kwangtung in the beginning. And they actually go into this gambling hall, and they know they're outnumbered. So they figure if they can take advantage of some of these guys getting drunk, they can peel away one of the guys and essentially just assassinate him. And that's what they do. And then they take their finger and write in blood, essentially a message like, "We're coming for you." So already right off the bat, you're like, wow, this is a pretty serious group here, bent on revenge. And as I said, we keep meeting characters, and it's like, who are you? Don't you know who I am? And then there's a scuffle, and then eventually someone will be on this side or that side. So you have Lo Meng playing a character named Iron Finger Chen. He's got these really strong fingers. Usually he plays a part where his physical strength is part of his character. People are attacking him with a staff, and he's just like, breaking little pieces of it off until there's nothing left. Philip Kwok plays a character named Beggar Sue, who's kind of like a wild card guy. Like, which side is he on? He's like a well-respected fighter. And you have a host of other characters. Like I said, Ku Fang is playing this rebel leader who's now going by a different name. Other than that, I mean, the plot is it's not much more to it than that. And like I said, when they jump forward in time, First of all, I didn't even really realize that they had done that. So many people were getting killed off here and there violently, because this is a Chang Cheh film. It took me a few seconds to figure out, oh, totally different characters here. So overall, at the end, I was just like, what the heck? It actually felt longer than its 90 minutes. Now, I'm going to compare this film. This is going to sound strange. I'm going to compare this film to a Universal Monsters film. You know, I love my Universal Monsters. A film called The House of Frankenstein, which you see all the different characters here at the bottom. In both cases, it seems like they just wanted to pack in a bunch of characters and or well-known actors, and which results in the overall narrative suffering a little bit. You know, the parts become better than the whole. And, you know, for this one, they wanted to bring back a lot of monsters. So it's like, all together, it says on the poster, Frankenstein's monster, okay, Wolfman, Dracula. But then they also say the Hunchback and Mad Doctor. So it's not the Hunchback from Notre Dame, but it's a Hunchback. So there's all this subplot about the Hunchback and his, you know, the woman he has a crush on who you know, dismisses him, and Dracula ends up getting short shrift in this one. It's just too crowded. That film was only an hour and 11 minutes long. This one is 90 minutes long. It's just not enough to get everything in a sort of a plot that is easy to follow, or it doesn't feel like the cliff notes of a much longer project. Essentially what happened, unfortunately, was that one of the main stars, Alexander Fusheng, who again is playing this sort of, you know, happy-go-lucky, somewhat comedic type character that he's very good at. He was actually suffered some injuries from another film, so they had to go on hiatus. So that was what the break was for. And like I said, they did take advantage of that to shoot some flashback scenes. And I don't know if all the actors, I imagine not all the actors had to come back and finish up filming, but that's kind of why it feels like a little disjointed. Of course, Alexander Fusheng, just a few years later in 1983, would pass away in a tragic car accident, which I've talked about on the channel. Very sad. So there's not a whole lot of dialogue in this film that isn't accompanying the fighting. This film is essentially just a series of set-piece battles. And the choreography is customarily excellent. It was done by a few people, including Robert Tai, who was a behind-the-scenes martial arts choreographer, but also three of the Venoms themselves, Lu Fang, Chang Cheh, and Philip Kwok. Now, the three of them I didn't mention last week in my review of The Magnificent Ruffians, but they were the fight choreographers for that film as well. So it's very good, and there's some crazy weapons. There's one scene where one of the guys, you know, he gets his sword broken or something, and then an assistant comes up with something wrapped in cloth, and it looks like there's a foot sticking out. It's really, what is that? And he takes this thing out, and it looks like a little statue. Okay, and it's like a statue of a mermaid, and he's swinging around, and he's braining people over the head with it. Just bizarre. But they didn't build it up like, oh, he's got a special weapon you got to watch out for. And a lot of these films, if one of the bad guys has some kind of special weapon, they build it up. They talk about it. The book calls it a mermaid sword. I didn't see any blades, but he did brain a few people with it. Yeah, this is a pretty violent one. A lot of people get stabbed, executed. There's a guy like smashing people with vases, and then another guy's like breaking them with his head, so he hides a knife in there. Well, what do you think happens there? A pretty entertaining film overall. Not one you would recommend to someone who's never seen one of these films. This would be more like House of Frankenstein. You wouldn't say, hey, this is the first Universal monster movie you would watch. If you watch some of the other ones, you would watch this, because you would still get something out of it. There are still good parts. You know, they brought back Karloff, and you know, there's still some pretty good parts. Same thing here. Alexander Fusheng is good. Ku Feng is good. Lo Mang is good. You know, they're all good. And, you know, a lot of the up-and-coming younger guys in this are very good, too. It's just an incomprehensible mess of a film. And look, I don't want to come across as too negatives, but I did notice a few other things, too. You know, in a lot of these films, they had great indoor sets where they were filming outdoor scenes indoors, and they, you know, you could tell that it's indoors, but it still looks pretty good. In this one, there's a scene down by the docks and the sky. It looks like it's right there. Like you can reach out and touch it, and it had like wrinkles in it. You know, sometimes the hair and makeup in these films is not like the very best, but usually it's passable and it's pretty good. There's one particular beard that somebody has. It just does not look good. So, you know, you kind of start to notice things like that. So when I rank my Venom Mob films, I suspect this one will be towards the bottom. But as I said, there are reasons why it turned out the way it did. And it still is an entertaining film. So what are your thoughts about the 10 Tigers of Kwangtung? Have you heard of this one? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Next week, we're going to change it up. We're going to go do a Lar Kar Long film, change it up from the Chang Cheh films. You know, a lot of them do have similar themes, so they kind of run together in your mind when you start reviewing them back to back to back. So we're going to change it up next week, do something a little different. But come back again next week for another Martial Arts Monday review, and I'll see you then. Thanks.